most important aspect of India-US relations, which are the defense relations. So this is the most important aspect of India-US relations, and if you are, there is a probability that you can get a question on the defense relations itself, and even if you are getting a general question on India-US relations, basically defense relations should be your most important part in answer writing. So India-US defense cooperation, it started in 1995. So in 2005 something happened. The then defense minister Pranab Mukherjee went to Washington and US signed a defense framework agreement with India. India had no idea why they were proposing this defense framework agreement, but later we realized the importance of this agreement. Now after that agreement, US was considering India as a strategic partner, and even the India-US nuclear deal was a part of that defense framework agreement. That was the reason why all of this nuclear deal, why all this defense relationship started. And in 2015, we renewed the defense framework agreement. A new defense framework agreement was signed for the next 10 years. And in 2016, between India and US, two major defense agreements were signed between India and US in 2016. And one was in June 2016, we signed the Information Exchange Annex Agreement. This agreement is basically about transferring aircraft carrier technology. See, how many aircraft carriers does India have? So you have the INS Vikramaditya. The INS Vikramaditya was basically given by the Russians, but it had many technical issues. So now India decided that we will build our own aircraft carriers. But for that, the best country in building the aircraft carriers is US. US has around 10 aircraft carriers. All the other countries only have around 1 or 2 aircraft carriers. So this Information Exchange Annex was basically about promoting aircraft carrier technology transfer between India and US. So this is a very, very important agreement. And in August 2016, India and US signed an agreement called the Logistics Agreement, or LEMOA Agreement. And then we come to our most important topic. In June 2016, something that is very, very important happened. In June 2016, when the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, visited US designated India as a major defense partner. So from now onwards, India will be considered as a major defense partner of US, and this is the most important part of India-US relations, because now we will be entitled to technology sharing. Means now India will be getting technology from the US, basically defense technology will be getting to India, and this is comparable with that of its closest allies. So now India has become a major non-NATO ally of the US. So we are not a military ally, but still we will be getting as much as technology, defense technology, comparable to the military allies. So this was the most important part of India-US relations. In June 2016, US designated India as the major defense partner of the United States. And now we will be having industrial collaboration, co-development of defense technologies, etc. So whenever you are writing any answer about India-US relations, you must mention this point. This is the most important aspect of India-US relations. And now the United States has been the largest arms supplier to India for the last 4 years. But like in a few months, Israel will be India's largest arms supplier. So that is one importance of India-Israel relations. For the last 4 years, till then it was Russia, but for the last 4 years, the biggest arms supplier to India is the United States. That is again a very important point. An aggregate worth of defense acquisition from US comes around $13 billion. And if that, recently there was an agreement between Tata and Lockheed Martin to make F-16 aircraft in India, if F-16 was selected by the Indian Air Force. And if that agreement becomes a success, this will, even the defense relationship will get a further boost. So defense angle is one of the strongest arms of India-US relations. And one major advantage of India buying F-16 is that Lockheed Martin will be shifting the entire F-16 fighter jet production line to India. And Pakistan has a lot of F-16 fighter jets. They will be needing spare parts, repairing everything, and India can block that also. So there is that angle to that defense relation. And India and US does more bilateral exercise with each other than they do with any other country. So US does more bilateral exercises with India than it does with any other country. So again, you can see the importance of India-US defense relations. And in 2016, there was an exercise called the Rim of the Pacific exercise. And the peculiarity of this exercise is that this is the largest international maritime exercise, and we participated in the 2016 Rim of the Pacific exercise. Then all of us know about the Malabar naval exercise. This was a bilateral exercise between India and US. But in 2015, Japan became a permanent partner of the Malabar naval exercise. And from that point onwards, China has been closely watching the Malabar naval exercise. And China is afraid that this is the beginning of a military alliance between India, Japan and US to contain the assertiveness of China in South China Sea as well as the Asia Pacific region. So US has often considered India and Japan as anchors to Asian security. And in the past, there were non-permanent participants like Australia and Singapore in the Malabar naval exercise also. And again, US has another proposition to build a quadrilateral to build a Asia-Pacific quadrilateral consisting of India, Australia, US and Japan, again to check the assertiveness of certain powers in the Asia-Pacific region. Then another important topic, the defense technology and trade initiative. So from this particular point onwards, we were basically buying defense tech from the US. But DTTI, it aims to take the defense relations to the next level. So here what we will be doing is that we will be doing technology transfer with the US. The US will be giving technology to India, and India and US will be doing cooperative research and development in the case of defense technology. So that is what the DTTA agreement is all about, and India and US are jointly developing things like aircraft carriers, jet engine technology also, etc. See, India has a huge problem with the jet engines, and that was one problem with our Tejas aircraft also. Basically, we are buying jet engines from US as of now, and now India and US have agreed to jointly develop jet engines. This is going to be a major development in the case of Indian Air Force. Then another major project between India and US is to develop the next generation armors which can protect against our soldiers against chemical as well as biological weapons. So this is again, the DTTA is again going to be a huge project. So under the DTTA, India and US mainly is cooperating on three major futuristic projects which include aircraft carriers, jet engine technology and chemical as well as biological weapon protection ensembles or armors. Then you might have, we have all heard about the India-US logistics agreement. That is again one of the most important topic, and you must write about the logistics agreement also when writing the main answers. So you have three agreements called foundational agreements. You have three agreements that the United States signs with its closest allies. These agreements include Logistics Support Agreement or LSA. Then there is a communication agreement called CISMOA, and there is a basic exchange of geospatial data agreement called BECA. So you have these three agreements. One was regarding logistics, and one is regarding communication and information security. Then there is a geospatial agreement on geospatial data also. So the United States signs these three agreements with any country with which it has close military partnership. So these agreements are called the foundational agreements by the US. This lays the foundation or the groundwork of US's military ties with any country. It promotes things like interoperability between militaries, common standards and systems, etc. Creating common standard systems, etc. Again, technology transfers of high-end type will be associated with these three foundational agreements. And in the three foundational agreements, the most important one is the logistics agreement. And India and US negotiated the logistics agreement for like the last 10 years. It was negotiated even during the UPA time period. But it was not, the UPA government was not ready to sign the logistics agreement. Anyway, finally in August 2016, the NDA government and the US administration signed the India-US logistics agreement. And this agreement is completely called Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement. So that is the formal name of the agreement, and this is basically a tweaked version of the Logistics Support Agreement. So this is again a foundational agreement. It is one of the foundation agreements. And what this agreement does is that it gives access to India as well as US militaries to the military facilities of the other country for refueling, replenishment, etc. So the Indian military can access US military bases like Diego Garcia military base or the US military base in Djibouti or any US military base for purpose of refueling, replenishment, etc. The same thing can be done by the US military. So that is what the logistics agreement is all about. It is about logistics, simply speaking. And this will be mainly used in the case of joint exercises done between India and US, then in the case of disaster relief, etc. And this one thing to note down here is that this is not a basing agreement. There will not be any stationing of US troops on Indian soil. This is not a basing agreement. That is one thing we need to clearly mention up when answering about the logistics agreement also. Then the second agreement is called the CISMOA, or the Communication and Information Security Agreement. This agreement is basically about interoperability of the communication systems. So US will be giving India like highly encrypted military communication technology if India signs this agreement. But so far India is not ready to sign this agreement because India is afraid that US might use these equipments to spy on Indian military operation. See, like when the NSA leaks by Edward Snowden came out, there were even news that came out that US were even spying on the closest allies of US like Germany. So India was really afraid that US might be using this for espionage activities against Indian military operation. So we haven't signed the communication agreement as of now, but this will be really beneficial in getting such kind of a highly encrypted technologies which cannot be decoded by enemy militaries. So this can be a very positive thing, and many of the security experts are saying that India should sign this agreement, and it will be boosting our cooperation in the case of military exercises, rescue relief operations, etc. Then the third agreement is Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement for Geospatial Cooperation. By this agreement, India and US will be exchanging geospatial data with each other. So this US will be like placing its digital sensors on Indian soil and all, and this will help India in the case of missile navigation, in the case of fighter jets, etc. The navigation of fighter jets, missiles, etc. But again, India is proposing that we have our own space technology, we have our own navigation technology. We doesn't want to sign the geospatial agreement with the US also. So we haven't signed this agreement also. Now, when we will be asked a question about the logistics agreement, we have to have an idea about how will this benefit India and what drawbacks India will be facing if India sign the logistics agreement. So let us come to that. So what will be the major advantages for India if India signs these three foundational agreements? So one area is basically in the case of technology transfer, then military communication will be clearly boosted by the signing of these three agreements. Then logistics purposes will be boosted. Indian Navy will be really benefited if it gets access to Diego Garcia, Djibouti naval base of the US, etc. Then India and US can share their experiences on various kind of fighting techniques. So India can help US in the case of fighting on various terrains. Like our borders are basically located on that kind of diverse terrains. Then ethnic conflicts. When dealing with ethnic conflicts, India is basically one of the best countries in the world. And United States can really help India in the case of cyber terrorism. See, cyber security is one of the biggest security issue of India. See, last year IRCTC was hacked, and IRCTC was in like around data of around 1 crore Indians were stolen from the IRCTC website, and the most shameful thing was that IRCTC wasn't even aware about that hacking, and it denied that hacking, and it only admitted hacking happened when the Maharashtra cyber cell alerted IRCTC. So that is the case of cyber security in India. India is in such a worse position in the case of cyber security. So that is one area US can really help India. They have the NSA, FBI, etc., which are really like advanced in the case of cyber security. Then in the case of rescue and relief operations, dealing with the improvised explosive devices used by the Pakistani based terror groups. That is one area, again, there will be a huge change. Like the terrorist groups often come up with like highly advanced technologies, like they will be using GPS enabled watch and like highly advanced explosive devices, and often the police will be checking them, but the police will have no idea about this kind of advanced technologies. So that has been a major problem that India faced when dealing with the internal security threats as well as the issue of terrorism. Then drawbacks, the UPA government has often said that this might lead to India's, the destruction of India's traditional strategic autonomy. Like India will become more of a military ally of US, and India might be supposed to support US in the case of any military conflicts and all. So that can be a huge issue. This can lead to setting of military alliances in Asia, and this might be seen as India's jettisoning the non-alignment policy. Like this is often a major criticism against the Narendra Modi administration. Narendra Modi is the only Indian Prime Minister who have skipped a non-aligned movement summit. So India is a country that brought non-alignment to the world itself. That was the brainchild of Jawaharlal Nehru himself. But Narendra Modi administration, and basically even the resurgent India after the Cold War, India didn't give much importance to the non-alignment. Basically, there is no more two superpowers. And India has, recently the Indian administration has followed a policy of multi-alignment rather than doing non-alignment. What does this mean is that India will be having military ties with the US, India will be having economic cooperation with China, then again India will be militarily engaging with Russia. So, and again India will be engaging with Japan in the case of infrastructure and economic projects, etc. So what this means is that India will be engaging with all major global powers. This will be a policy of multi-alignment. The non-alignment was a policy of neutrality. This will be a policy of India coming to play a very confident role on the global stage. So there is this criticism, many in India has criticized that we cannot jettison non-alignment. Non-alignment is a voice of developing nations, and even now developing nations are facing a lot of issues. Non-alignment movement still has a lot of significance in the international relations. So NAM is going to be a major factor, and there can be pressure on India to buy expensive weaponry from the US. See, when Obama came to India in 2010, he basically wanted India to buy F-16 aircrafts. That was a 14 billion contract. If India bought F-16 aircrafts, they could have got that much huge of a contract, and it would have created somewhere around 40,000 jobs in the US. And that could have got Obama easily re-elected. That is why Obama visited India in 2010. So there can be that kind of a diplomatic pressure. Then India is afraid that if we buy the communication equipments, US might get an idea about the military operations done by India. Then another problem is China and Russia. This can send a provocative message to the dragon. That is one major problem. And Russia, another major issue is Russia. Russia has been an old friend of India, and Russia is considered to be the biggest strategic ally of India. You know why it is considered to be like that? Whenever India faced its worst crises, Russia was the only country that stood behind India. See, when we had the 1971 war, the Russians sent out a nuclear submarine to the Bay of Bengal. When in the Kargil war, again they supported us. In 1998, when India did a nuclear weapon testing, when all the countries were against India, again Russia welcomed India's nuclear weapon testing. So Russia has been the closest partner of India, and India doesn't want to alienate Russia. And the Russians has been making concerns that India is becoming a military ally of the US and all. See, when India signed the logistics agreement with the United States, in the next day, there is a newspaper called Russia Today. This is a newspaper run by the Russian government, and in that Russia Today newspaper, an editorial came out and it said what the BRICS member India is really up to. You can see the Russians were really concerned about India being a military ally of the US. So this can really impact India-Russia relations. Like even Trump, one major expectation of India regarding Trump was that Trump will improve US-Russia relations, but now the US military establishment is alleging that Russia engaged in the US, or it hacked or participated or tried to influence the US presidential elections, and now they have brought even more additional sanctions on Russia. So US-Russia relations are sort of at a very lowest point, and that is going to affect India-Russia relations also.